Okay, so I'm just going to start briefly with my history and why I founded the agency. So before SagaSocial, I used to work at Sulake, the developer of Habba Hotel. I have some ex-colleagues here from there, and I worked there for close to 7 years doing PR in several different positions. And then that stopped at one point, and already during my time there I thought that in Finland you should start a PR agency for the game industry, as there isn't one. And as the industry is fairly new still, there aren't people with the needed experience for doing it. So that's why I started, and I've been an entrepreneur for close to half a year now, and it's been fun. And so what I do is that I help game studios and other technology companies in their PR, which all starts from the business plan, what the company has. So you need to look at PR as kind of reaching your business goals and what communications and PR can do to help that. And so it's mainly about visibility in the media and building your messages. Usually you push certain messages across to reach your goals. And I help building that and polishing that. And I think mainly on the B2B side, PR is more to do with kind of helping you find the best employees, especially here in Finland. I think it's a very critical situation at the moment for the game studios, because everybody's looking for the best people in the industry, and there are so many new studios being founded all the time, so it's kind of a big competition on the best developers and people in the industry. Also, it can help you find the best partners and get you funding. Eventually, you need to be visible to be able to kind of affect the business side of it. So far I've done mostly projects with my clients. So we've done thought about the client goals, what needs to be achieved, and then what kind of messages you need to push forward to reach those goals. And then we've done press releases and distributed them in Finland both and also internationally. So I can kind of help in that area as well, because I've been working in an international game company for a long time, so I have quite a few contacts in the industry. So kind of a background of what I do. And now I'm just gonna go into the case studies to explain more of what PR is all about in the game industry. So this is quite an interesting one. We have ex-Sulake people working in a company called Hyperspace Yard. This was kind of a hobby project, so to say, because everybody in the company works elsewhere. They just had been working on this game since last February. And they really thought there's lots of potential in the game, so they wanted to publish it, and they needed help for the game launch. And the limited company was founded 2 weeks prior to the launch. Here's actually a person from, Jaffa is part of this project. So at this point, I think they had been testing it with friends and relatives, and who had been saying that, okay, lots of potential, and there might be something. And personally, I thought it was fun, but again, one of those games when you really don't know like what's going to happen when you push it to the marketplace. So the main idea was to hit the review sites and some of the international contacts. We didn't do any PR efforts here in Finland, so it was mainly international, and get as many reviews as possible around the world. And the results were pretty interesting. we probably approached over 100 review sites with the launch. And I also got in touch with some of my Apple contacts who said that, okay, it's pretty late to get in touch with them because there's a 4-week lead time before kind of getting any feature spots there. And the results were really positive. The game got like tens and tens of reviews. Most of them were really positive. And it was received like really well. Even one of the best ones was, hi. One of the best ones was clearly it was included in a Russian TV game review show, and it was kind of discussed about there, and it was on YouTube, and the Russians were really ecstatic, and I think there were lots of coverage also in China for some reason. So this was an interesting kind of a test case. I think this was the first client case that I took, so it was kind of very new, and I had no idea what's going to happen. And why is miksi kai toi muuten näkyy tolleen niinku? No, well.
Sitten voit really alaspäin tuon kangasta, niin sit se näyttää sen koko.
Ehkä.
Siinä on toinen paikka.
Okay.
High tech.
And eventually it reached spot 8 in the US App Store in the Best New Apps category. So I think they made some money of it, and they still do. And now it's been featured in the Google Play Store, and there's a clear spike in the sales due to that. But this was one of those interesting projects when you really you do your best and you contact your contacts, and then let's see what happens. But this was kind of a hobby, and obviously I think not many of you know about it. It hasn't been talked about in Finland or in many other places, but it was an interesting one.
So what did you actually do?
What did I do?
Yeah.
I kind of organized their PR assets for the media. I contacted my own media contacts, like international contacts like Pocket Gamer and so forth. And we approached the review sites and sent code, so because it's a premium game, so you need a code to get it for free. So that's what I did. And then I gathered the media attention coverage afterwards. So that was my task, and obviously, well, we did write a press release as well. Okay, then this is pretty recent case. I think most of you probably know PlayRaven. So this was also like a very brief one-off project. They just got, in January, end of January, they got a big funding, finalized a big funding round, and they wanted to announce that. So the main idea there was to get media visibility for the studio about the funding news, and also in Finland and international publications. And yet again, to attract talent, to find employees. They have quite a few positions open at the moment, and they need to get a new team together. I think they got quite a few applications after the visibility here. So in this case, we wrote a press release together with the PlayRaven CEO, Lasse. And then I reached out to media in Finland via a tool, kind of a press release distribution tool. And also kind of got in touch with my international media contacts. And, well, it was pretty well received. It got about 60 media hits around the world. And all of a sudden, quite a few of them were in China. This was picked up by Reuters. So every time a news agency picks up a news, it usually kind of starts spreading from there. So it's always a good thing. So yes, there's one example. But then I also do kind of long-term planning. So I have one client at the moment in Sweden, and we're kind of building the whole basis for their communications at the moment. They haven't been doing much of PR actively before, even though it's a pretty known game and brand. But now we're just gonna we're building their messaging and the whole company story from scratch, basically, so that all the spokespeople always know what to talk about. And with them I work continuously, so it's kind of an ongoing project with them.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Related to this a bit, like when you promote Finnish gaming companies, do you use like them coming from Finland as some kind of an asset there, like in the footsteps of Supercell and Rovio? Does that generate a bit more buzz?
I think it's at the moment Finland is very much like looked at, so yeah, it's often mentioned when promoting. Yeah. So here are a few cases. It's the company I have. It has only been up for 5 months, so I don't have that many cases yet. But I'm just going to go back in time to my sulake position, and also a thing called crisis communications, which is also very important part of PR. Now, I think for all game studios, well, every company in general, it's very important to prepare for the crisis situations beforehand. And for most cases, you can always think about the worst case scenarios, and so you can prepare for the cases. But in some cases, there might be some things that you can't prepare beforehand, but mostly you can. And I think in gaming, I think the most common crisis parts are like, especially with free-to-play games, it's the money spent in games, especially if kids are playing the games and they spend tons and tons of money there. That's one of the most typical crisis situations. Then there might be some technical difficulties that last for a longer period of time. And the third, like if the game has social elements, you really should prepare for crises related to pedophiles or such. Because, well, it can happen. And I strongly recommend to look at the crisis communications kits beforehand, before the actual crisis hits, because when it hits, it's a bit late at that point. Anyway, the good thing is that today the media is pretty fast-paced, so tomorrow people might not even remember the crisis from yesterday. But I'm still going to go into a crisis situation that I've been in the middle of. And this didn't go away in 24 hours. So this happened just under 2 years ago. And this is kind of a good example of how much the media can do without even really a good reason behind it. So Habbo Hotel had a pedophile scandal that lasted for quite some time there. And obviously, because it's a teen community, we were prepared. I mean, in Habbo, the biggest crisis situations are pedophiles and the money spent there. And so we had crisis communications kits prepared for them. But in this case, things got a bit out of hand. First of all, Channel 4, which is a UK media, did a study which had one aim to basically, well, not quite, but to ruin Habbo Hotel. And all the news posted there were not necessarily all true. So they did did this massive report, and that was on TV, and then everybody panicked, and the news started traveling everywhere. Even our investors kind of panicked a bit. And there are so many points to the whole story that I can't even explain everything here, but they did, well, it's a very interesting case that how a media can affect in the company's future. And eventually, the decision was made that the whole community was muted for a period of time. And it's a teen community, and teens like to chat and do stuff together. They go to a place where they can chat. And this is what happened. And quite a few, well, I think, I don't know, I can't remember the percentages, but I think over half of the users just left the community during the time it was muted. And I can tell you that my media monitoring tool during that time was exploding. So was my phone and my email and, well, everything. I basically worked 24/7 for close to 2 weeks. And we had BBC reporters outside the office trying to get kind of statements from the employees. So every time I had to send emails to the whole staff saying that when you go outside for a cigarette or for lunch or whatnot, don't wear your ID badge to show which company you're from. Don't talk about the case or the company outside the office. And they were actually filming outside the office, and it was just a few times we left the office through the basement, which was pretty interesting. Anyway, so yes, that was a story. I'm not gonna comment on how the whole crisis was taken care of. That's not my place.
How did it go internally in the company? So you were sending the emails, but was the crisis communication management in the company? Did that go well?
We did communicate, obviously, once. First of all, Channel 4 gave us an option to answer their accusations. They sent us an email, and they called me, and they said that we're going to publish this report, and what are your responses to this and that?
No, I mean to like the employees.
Employees.
Like within the company.
Yeah. So first of all, they didn't. Just going to go back a bit. Okay. They didn't take into account any of the responses we sent them, like none. So it was kind of pre-planned. And before the news went out, this was completely unexpected, and I think all of the employees were used to getting these kinds of news not every once in a while, but you know, every once in a while. So we didn't expect it to explode as much. So when the report went out, obviously the next I think it was evening UK time, the next morning we sent messages to the whole company about the situation, and we kind of tried to keep them updated as much as we could, and did weekly sessions inside, like staff sessions during the crisis. So yeah. Personally, I have to say that I couldn't even concentrate on that part. So it could have gone better, I think. But at that moment, I was completely bombarded with journalists from here and there, so I had to deal with them right away. So it's, yeah.
So if it would happen again, what would you do differently?
I'm kind of, obviously communications and PR staff are following the management. So I think overall, when you're prepared for this kind of situations, you should stick to the messaging, and you should stick to the whole planned actions and not do anything differently. You shouldn't start explaining things in situations.
So did you explain something, like maybe go to?
I think it slightly went to the explanation mode a bit. Yeah.
So more like apologize or?
You, of course,
Yeah.
apologize. Yeah, absolutely. But it's a teen community. I think it's like one of the most moderated ones there are, and there were really strict measurements against these kind of situations, and in the end, nothing really happened. Nothing happened in the community because we followed all the chat logs and everything afterwards. We found the reporters. Nothing happened. It was just teens talking about some sex related, and you can't even talk that directly about sex because that's moderated as well. So they're teenagers. They like to talk about sex.
So actually, the whole crisis was sort of made up by the Channel 4. So that was like
Yes.
the start with nothing had happened.
Yeah.
So could that be somehow redeemed, or could it have been redeemed somehow in the communications, or?
I think yes. Well, many things happened. The fact that our investors turned their backs on the company had an effect. So it's at that point you kind of do what the board wants you to do. So it wasn't. This was something that had happened previously also. It was kind of a pedophile stuff crisis. I think for every game that has social elements and can be played by younger people, there's always a risk of something similar happening. So yeah.
So what's your advice for if something similar would happen to?
Well, first of all, I think if you work in a company and your game does have social elements and kids can potentially play, prepare beforehand. Get your messages straight kind of beforehand so you know what to say when it happens, if it happens.
So would you recommend, like, creating different kind of scenarios before?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What would be the agenda? If this scenario 1 happens or scenario 2?
Oh, it's basically, I think, yes. Well, the different crisis situations. You should think about all the crisis situations that can potentially happen. I think in most cases you can think quite a few of them that can happen. And then you just have to know what the company opinion on X, Y, Z is. And what is the general statement that is coming from the company if the crisis takes place. And always stick to those messages.
And I guess communicate with investors too.
Of
about
course,
the crisis
of
plan,
course,
so they
yeah.
don't get scared.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, but yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So yes, I think if there are any other questions. No?
I just feel that this is part of like the bigger picture of what's happening in the UK with David Cameron's legislation changes.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, UK is tricky, I think. It's tricky, yeah. Yeah.
Do you think it would have been good, or do you think the museum was a good idea?
Personally?
Yeah,
Well, I'm not going to comment.
Yeah.
I'm not going to comment on any of that, on how was acted, or I'm not going to comment.
Did you have enough channels to communicate through, or did you?
Channels.
Yeah, like you had prepared communication, but did you have places to deliver it enough?
Yes, yes. I mean, I got calls like continuously from the LA Times, from BBC, from like all the biggest media around the world. So yeah, I had channels.
Or they were asking, did you have it in the private?
I think we sent out press releases via PR agencies based in the US and UK, So yeah, and obviously we continuously updated our website, the blog there, and answered questions there. And I think at that point there was quite a bit of traffic on the website, so when we posted a blog on the website, it did got attention, and it was picked up by media quite soon after. But personally, I can say that this was probably I don't think I'm ever going to be in such a crisis situation, ever, in my life. But if I am, I'm prepared and not scared. Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you.